America, my name is Osei-Frimpong. Let's do a quick tribute to Dawn Staley. Dawn Staley is a coach for the University of South Carolina Gamecocks. She just won the national championship. Second championship in 3 years, coming off an undefeated season. She almost got there last year. Didn't work out. Almost a near perfect season last year. This year she had a perfect season and caps it off with a chip. Now people are saying Dawn Staley is a wonderful recruiter. She's a great coach. She does all of those things very well. She knows how to coach talent. And I think what gets lost is that her recruits, her team, isn't actually as recruits better than University of Connecticut or LSU or a few other teams. Like, she's a good recruiter, but that's not how she wins. She wins because she is actually that good of a coach. She is that good of a coach. And not just the X's and O's. Like, she gets more out of her players, out of the same players. If she coaches the University of Connecticut, if for some reason last year they just swapped teams, Dawn Staley still wins because she would have gotten more out of those people. And now the University of Connecticut had a lot of people on the bench, a lot of injuries. Doesn't matter. Dawn Staley is just a better coach insofar as she knows how to get over the long term, not at the game necessarily, but over the course of a year, she knows how to get more out of her players. She graduated after a near perfect season last year. She graduated 5 starters. So she comes in with a new group of starters, an entirely new group of starters, and wins the whole chip after nearly doing so last year. And it's not like she's Nick Saban, right? So you could say, oh, she's kind of like Nick Saban or Kirby Smart. Well, Nick Saban and Kirby Smart have a distinct advantage in recruiting, with respect to both resources and what they can offer the students, and then the football culture and infrastructure, all of that. So their kids are just bigger and faster. The University of South Carolina's women's basketball team are not bigger and faster. They are just a better team. Staley's a good recruiter, and recruits matter. But the way the NBA, the women's talent works at the college level is, at that level, there isn't that big of a difference. There isn't a sufficient difference to account for Staley's success in terms of recruiting. She's got great players. Was it Tessa Johnson and Malevy? And then of course Cardoza. She's got great players, but it's not the recruits. It's not the players. She could swap players with any person. You give Dawn Staley any of the top 8 teams, if you give them to her, she turns them into a champion. So it's like she's that good of a coach. And you just have to understand what that means. And she was that good of a player. She was one of them as a player. She was one of the best point guards in the world. That's how you win an Olympics. Or 3. Maybe she won 96, 2000, and 2004. I don't know if she was. I know she was on the 96 team, and I know she was on the 2004 team. I don't know if she was on the 2000 team. I wouldn't be surprised if you were. So maybe that's how you win 3 Olympics. She's very good at both the X's and O's parts of the game, at the recruiting part of the game, although that's not how she wins. I don't want this to get reduced to just her being a real recruiter. She's a good coach as insofar as she gets the best out of the players she has. She is a winner who turns good, talented people into winners themselves who beat other talented people. And it's a remarkable thing. And whatever Dawn Staley says to do with the NBA or the WNBA, the women's game, or at the NCAA level or at the professional level, we should just do, because we need whatever she does sprinkled all over the nation. She is that person. We need her sprinkled all over the nation because she's special. She is special. If I had a daughter who was, a really good basketball player, even if she wasn't going to go to the professional levels, if I had a daughter who was really good at basketball and she wanted to play in college basketball and she had a chance to go to any school in the nation, I would send her to University of South Carolina, not because I would want her to win a championship or because I would give her the best chance of becoming a pro, but because I want her to spend 4 years with Dawn Staley. and see that magic, because I think it'll make her a better person. So I just want you to understand what that means, and that's what my tribute to Dawn Staley comes from, and my respect for her. You graduate 5 starters and then come back and win the whole thing. When last year your 5 starters were very good themselves. You come back and win the whole thing perfect and with a perfect record. Like, she's just very good at coaching. And once again, she recruits well, but, you know, she didn't have the best players in the team. Caitlin Clark was, and Hannah Hidalgo of Notre Dame, like, there are other good players. And, so now that I've talked about Dawn Staley enough and what she does, let me just talk about the women's basketball game in general. And you can, discount me if you want, but I think I'm right, and I've been thinking about this. The ceiling for the women's game is astronomical. Because right now, at the professional level for the men, you have to be a freak athlete. You need to be a genetic freak. There's no amount of practicing. There's no amount of handling. There's no amount of shooting. You're not going to get you shot off unless you're 6'2", unless you're Trae Young, right? So, like, there are going to be some freaks, but for the most part, you have to be a genetic freak to get you shot off. If Luka was, 5'10", it wouldn't matter. It wouldn't matter. It's the fact that he's so good and so big that matters. So that already cuts off a lot of talent that could be in the NBA, but isn't, right? Like, people don't know that Michael Jordan had a brother, Larry Jordan, who was like Mike, except smaller. He never hit that second growth spurt. So he doesn't get to be Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan needed to be 6'6". He couldn't have been Michael Jordan at 5'10". And that matters because that cuts off the number of people and the quality of dedication it takes to become an NBA star and to play basketball at that league. So not only do you cut out this number of people who would have worked hard to do it, it changes the game, because now you not only have to be a great shooter, you need to be 6'4" to get your shot off, right? So in the women's game, you don't have to be a mutant, a genetic freak. Like Lexi Brown is 5'8", 5'9". Sue Bird's 5'8", 5'9". I think they're both 5'9" in shoes. Like I said, Hannah Hidalgo is like 5'6". Like, you can be an average woman, slightly taller than average, but mostly an average woman, and be an impact player in the women's game if you hone your game in the way that you can't be an average guy and still be an impact player in the NBA if you hone your game. It doesn't matter how you hone your game, or even at the D1 level, if you hone your game, right? So it's going to take a culture, a bigger culture than it is right now, and I think the women's game is going to be fantastic. It's going to probably, Caitlin Clark just gave it a booster shot, because now white dads are looking at their daughters the way they used to look at their sons, and they're like, and that's going to mean something, because it's going to put money into training and skills in a way that we haven't seen, or we started to see. And I was saying before that the generation of young female basketball players now were raised by mothers who played basketball and fathers who played basketball. And it's not like the mothers who played basketball because they were just pushed into it because they were the tallest woman on the court. That their mothers are the first generation of mothers who played it because they were pushed by their dads, right? So it was actually, so you have real serious family investment in a culture of basketball, in a way that, like, because it's different if one parent's like, let's do the sport, and the other parent's low-key undermining it. But now that you get it from both sides, in a way, because mothers themselves were pushed by their parents, not because they were tall, but were actually pushed by their parents, you'll get like a dual understanding in a way that's going to create a lot of very good point guards. And like, look, the women's game, I still have a problem watching the bigs, the footwork on the bigs. I can't watch Aja Wilson play. Like, I don't like the footwork on the bigs, but the guards are phenomenal. And I don't think it's going to be surprising when the women guards shoot better than the male guards. I think it's only a matter of time. I can't say it's only a matter of time. I think it's going to be quite possible that in general, the women guards will shoot better than the men's guards because it's easier to get a shot off. And so more people are going to practice shooting. And so you'll get more people who are better at it. You'll get more people who are better at it. Because you don't have to be a genetic freak to even get your shot off in the women's game. So like now more people are going to shoot. And I think in general, smart people are taking women's sports more seriously. Like I said, more dads are looking at their daughters as they used to just look at their sons. And then more white dads are doing it, which means the money is going to come and follow. And so they'll get a better infrastructure for the process. So I think it's an exciting time to be to watch women's basketball. And it's going to be an exciting, you can be cynical about a lot of things in America for the next 20, 30 years, but I think the next 20 or 30 years are going to be a great time for women's basketball because kids now, young girls are doing the drills. Young girls are doing the drills in an obsessive type of way that used to be frowned upon when even boys did it. But now we don't frown upon it for boys. And we now don't frown upon it for girls. So you're going to see some we haven't seen the girl Jason Williams. We haven't seen, White Chocolate. We haven't seen the girl Rondo yet with the back. Like the girls are good. The girls are good, but we haven't seen those kinds of handles yet. But I think we are going to see those kinds of handles come up. And look, Kelsey Plum plays ball. Maya Moore. I think it was Maya Moore when I saw her just kind of how subtle she was with the ball. And I was like, oh, she's kind of like Chris Paul. So we have seen the lady Chris Paul if it's, Maya Moore. But we haven't seen the lady Rhonda. We haven't seen the lady J. Will, but we will. I think we will. In the next generation of handlers are going to come with we're going to see the female Kyrie and Sham God because they're not going to get sized out of the game. They're going to be 5'4". They're going to be 5'6", but going to have a crazy creativity with the ball that's actually going to be effective because you don't have to be 6'2" with that crazy creativity anymore for the women's game. So it's possible. And there's an outside chance. Now, this is the outside. The outside chance is that in 20 years, women are simply going to be better, more a more interesting game to watch. Couldn't say that 20 years ago because women couldn't shoot. And, the big play was ugly. And, there were a few, real athletes like Don Staley. And there were a few people who could put it on the ground, make the whole squad. But for the most part, it was a sloppy game. It's not the case now. And it's not going to be because the kids are coming with better fundamental, a tougher work ethic, and, a better home training with respect to the culture of the game. So, you're going to get handles like Rondo. You're going to get the people with balls on the string, and they're not going to have to be 6'9", or they're not even going to have to be 6'2". They could be 5'9" because they don't have to get their shot off as fast, right? So the women's game might actually be more entertaining in 20 years than the men's game because the men might actually be too physical, be too athletic for the game. It might just become too much about size, too much strength and power, and not enough about determination and skills and stuff. They might actually the game strictures might be gamed by just a bunch of people who are seven. There are only so many ways to defend against and score against someone who's 7 feet tall. Right? So the game will just kind of narrow in a way that the women's game might not. And I said before that real sports aren't necessarily about speed and power. They're about precision and will. And the sport is the technology that enables the realization of this will and precision. And this is why you have weight classes in boxing and stuff like that, because you don't want it to just be about mechanics and physics. You want it to be about training and skill and will and technique. the women's game might actually be a better fit for the rules of basketball in 20 years. In 20 years, once there's a deeper culture of kids, of young dads and moms who are watching Caitlin Clark, and then like now look at their 2-year-old and think, I can do that. My kid can be able to do that, and I can train her to do that. That's something that I can do, and that would be exciting. So in a way that you could look at Michael Jordan, but if you know that you are 5'8" and your wife's 5'7", it's not even worth training your kid to be Michael Jordan, because like they're not going to be able to compete anyway. It doesn't matter. So it's possible that like in the same way that depending on who you talk to, I enjoyed watching women's tennis more than I watched men's tennis because it was a different game. For a few years, men's tennis just became about a big serve and not a lot else. And the women's tennis game was interesting. So I used to, if I given a choice, I would watch women's tennis. Women's gymnastics is something I would watch more than men's. The center of gravity, more interesting types of moves, I think. So not all sports where men are, bigger and faster are better because everyone is bigger and faster. Some sports need the physical limitations to actually bring out the will and precision that's endemic to the sport, right? And sometimes having everyone be so big and so fast, actually you lose what's special about the sport. And you have to change the rules of the sport to get out that special thing. So it's not there yet because we don't have the culture yet, but I would not be surprised if in 10, 15 years, especially once bigs get their better footwork, and there's even a better culture among the guards. Because look, the guards right now move great, but they could even be better. There's no reason why I'm not going to see a female Jason Williams with the creative passes, or female Rondo, or female, Kyrie at that level. And like, there's not just going to be one of them. I think there's going to be a lot of them because of the possibilities. Because you don't have to be a genetic freak to actually get in the game. Like, there are going to be a lot more Caitlin Clarks who shoot from the logo comfortably. Because Steph Curry is bigger than you think. Right? So there are a lot of 5'10" Steph Currys, or guys who could have been Steph Curry at 5'10" if they would have stuck with it, and they would have stuck with it if they had a chance. But Steph Curry is not 5'10", right? He's bigger than you think. And so he was incentivized by his own size to keep going at it and hone his craft. Now, there are a lot of like 5'8" women who won't be cut off because they're too small and will hone the craft. So I wouldn't be surprised if, like I said, the quality of shooters is in the women's game in time. In time, and the women's game will just be better to watch because the size and the speed of the men will actually make the game worse. So, thank you. And the technique of the women is getting better. And like I said, like now that we're serious about training girls as if they're boys, like it's going to be an incredible time for women's basketball in the next 15 years. It's going to be a very interesting game because the girls look great. They're looking better, and they're going to look better. And it's going to make the men's game look stagnant in comparison. Thank you for your time. Talk to you later. Bye. Oh, if you appreciate what I'm doing, go ahead and go to www.funkyacademic.com and kick in $5, $15, or $50 a month, and I'll keep doing what I'm doing. Peace.